The laughter echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Academy as Zextar flapped his iridescent wings in animated mockery. His forearms gestured wildly as he addressed the cluster of alien students gathered around the memorial wall. "Look at this," he chittered, his compound eyes glinting with amusement. "The great and terrible humans, banned from our sacred halls." His thorax vibrated with mirth. These soft, pink creatures with their tiny claws and pathetic single hearts. What could they possibly do to us? Velna, a towering Krillian with scales that shifted from blue to purple, nodded her massive head. "My grandmother still speaks of them in whispers," she rumbled, her voice like grinding stone. "She says they're too dangerous to study alongside civilized species. Too unpredictable." Unpredictable. Quinn's tentacles writhed with skeptical energy. The young cephalopod's chromatophores flashed rapid patterns of disbelief across his translucent skin. "They can't even breathe underwater. Their planet hasn't even achieved basic weather control. What threat could they possibly pose to civilizations that bend spacetime?" The group had gathered here every day for weeks, drawn to the peculiar gap in the Academy's species roster. Every known sentient race in the galaxy had representatives walking these halls. Every race except one. The Terrans, as they were formerly known, remained conspicuously absent, their admission banned by the High Council of Educational Standards nearly 60 years ago. Dr. Threnody, their elderly Vorthan professor, had refused to discuss the matter in detail. Her crystalline form had simply resonated with uncomfortable harmonics whenever the subject arose. "Some knowledge," she had said, her voice like wind chimes in a storm, "is dangerous to the young and unprepared. But youth rarely heeds such warnings." "I've analyzed their physiology," announced Crix, a brilliant young synthetic whose chrome surface reflected the warm academy lighting. "Their bone density is laughably low. Their muscle fibers are inefficient. They lack natural weapons, protective shells, or even basic electromagnetic sensitivity. By every measurable standard, they rank among the weakest species in known space." This statement drew nods from the assembled students. Each of them represented evolutionary perfection from their respective worlds. Zextar's people had conquered the skies with wings that could slice through atmosphere at supersonic speeds. Velna's ancestors had survived ice ages that would have shattered continents. Quinn's species had developed neural networks so advanced they could process quantum calculations instinctively. And yet, somehow, these fragile humans had earned a ban that no other species, not even the notoriously violent Sarkans or the territorially aggressive Exerons, had received. "There has to be classified material," whispered Lisa, a young ethereal whose gaseous form flickered with nervous energy. "The archives must contain the real reasons. The faculty wouldn't maintain such secrecy over weaklings." "Exactly." Zextar's wings buzzed with excitement. "My cousin works in archive maintenance. She mentioned there's an entire restricted section dedicated to human contact reports. Sealed files that require Level 7 clearance." Level 7. Quinn's tentacles went rigid. "That's reserved for existential threats, stellar weapons, consciousness-destroying viruses, world-ending technologies." "Which proves my point," Crix interjected, his optical sensors flickering. "The classification level is clearly an administrative error. No species that primitive could warrant such extreme security measures." The group exchanged glances, or the equivalent, given their diverse sensory organs. The Academy's restricted archives were located in the deep core, protected by both physical barriers and psychic wards. Accessing them would require bypassing multiple security systems and risking immediate expulsion. But the mystery had become an obsession. Every day, more students joined their informal discussions. The Hune question had evolved from curiosity to academic rebellion. If their professors wouldn't provide answers, they would find them independently. "Tonight," Zextar declared, his compound eyes glinting with determination. The overnight security rotation has a gap between 300 and 400 hours. My cousin confirmed it. This is madness. Lysa's form flickered more rapidly. If we're caught, we won't be caught. Velna's scales shifted to confident gold. My people have been infiltrating enemy strongholds since before your species discovered fire. And besides, her massive head turned toward the memorial wall. Aren't we supposed to be learning about interspecies relations? How can we understand the galaxy if we're forbidden from studying an entire species? The logic was sound, even if the method was questionable. One by one, the students nodded their agreement. Whatever secrets the archives contained about humanity, they would uncover them. None of them suspected that by morning, their understanding of strength, survival, and the true nature of apex predators would be forever changed. The archive vault door stood 3 meters tall, its surface a seamless blend of quantum-locked metals that would have required a stellar forge to create. Bioluminescent warning symbols pulsed along its edges in 17 different languages, each one carrying the same message. Authorized personnel only. Level 7 clearance required. Zextar's wings vibrated with nervous energy as his cousin, Nixra, worked her maintenance tools along the door's base. The older hexapod's movements were practiced and precise, her 6 arms manipulating multiple devices simultaneously. The psychic wards are the real problem, she whispered, her compound eyes never leaving her work. They're designed to trigger memory wipes in unauthorized minds. But the physical locks. A satisfied click echoed through the corridor. Child's play. The assembled students watched in tense silence as the massive door began to iris open, revealing a chamber that seemed to absorb light itself. Emergency illumination flickered to life automatically, casting eerie shadows across walls lined with data storage units, holographic projectors, and what appeared to be physical specimens in containment fields. 30 minutes, Nixra warned. After that, the next security sweep begins, and even I can't explain away an unlocked level 7 vault. The students moved quickly into the chamber, their diverse forms adapting to the strange environment in different ways. Quinn's chromatophores shifted to match the shadows while Velna's scales naturally filtered the harsh lighting. Crix's optical sensors automatically calibrated to the new spectrum. Here, Lysa's gaseous form had drifted toward a central console where holographic labels flickered in the Academy's standard script. Terran Contact Archives. First Contact Protocols. Combat Assessment Reports. Combat Assessments. Zextar's wings stopped vibrating entirely. For a species that hasn't achieved basic space travel, Crix interfaced directly with the console, his chrome surface reflecting the data streams as they flowed through his consciousness. Accessing. Now. The first hologram materialized above them. A 3-dimensional star map showing a small yellow star system on the galaxy's outer rim. Earth appeared as a tiny blue dot, unremarkable among billions of similar worlds. Initial survey report, Crix narrated as the data flowed through him. Standard reconnaissance mission. Probe deployment successful. Basic life signs detected. Preliminary assessment. Primitive species. Early industrial development. Minimal threat level. The map zoomed in, showing the probe's descent through Earth's atmosphere. Cities appeared, small, crude by galactic standards, but showing signs of rapid technological advancement. Second probe deployment, 6 months later, Crix continued. The hologram shifted, showing a different Earth. The cities had grown. New structures appeared. Population increase noted. Accelerated development patterns. That's normal, Velna rumbled. Most species experience rapid growth after achieving industrial capacity. But Quinn's tentacles were writhing with unease. His species' pattern recognition was among the best in the galaxy, and something about the data felt wrong. Show the next entry. The hologram updated again. Earth appeared once more, but now massive structures dominated the landscape. Not cities, something else. geometric patterns that stretched across continents. Third probe deployment, Crick's voice carried the first hints of confusion. Timeline: 1 year after initial contact. Note: probe destroyed before data transmission complete. Cause unknown. Destroyed? Zextar's 4 arms gestured frantically. By what? They don't have space-capable weapons. Fourth probe deployment, Crick's continued, his optical sensors flickering rapidly. Timeline: 18 months after initial contact. Note: probe destroyed immediately upon atmospheric entry. Analysis suggests targeted antimatter weaponry. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of the storage units. Antimatter weapons represented technology centuries beyond what the initial surveys had indicated. There must be an error. Lysa's form flickered weakly. Species don't advance that rapidly. It's physically impossible. But Crick's was already accessing the next files, and his chrome surface had begun reflecting patterns of deep confusion. Fifth probe deployment. Timeline: 2 years after initial contact. Result: probe destroyed before entering system. Long-range analysis indicates. His voice faltered. Indicates what? Velna scales had shifted to dark, aggressive red. Indicates complete stellar fortification. Indicates complete stellar fortification. The entire system is now defended by weapons platforms using technologies that shouldn't exist. The hologram updated one final time, showing Earth's solar system as it appeared 2 years after first contact. What they saw defied everything they understood about technological development. The space around Earth swarmed with defensive structures, not crude satellites or simple orbital platforms, but sophisticated weapons systems that dwarfed the combined military might of most galactic civilizations. The asteroid belt had been converted into a defensive grid. The outer planets showed signs of industrial modification on a scale that suggested entire worlds had been transformed into manufacturing centers. "This is impossible," Quinn whispered, his chromatophores cycling through colors of fear and disbelief. "No species develops this rapidly. The resource requirements alone would take centuries to implement." But Crick's had found something else. His optical sensors were locked onto a data stream that made his entire form vibrate with processing strain. "There's more," he said, his voice now carrying harmonics of genuine terror. Combat reports. Direct engagement protocols. Casualty assessments. Casualties. Zextar's wings had gone completely still. Who engaged them in combat? The answer appeared in the hologram, and every student in the chamber felt their understanding of the universe shift permanently. The image showed ships, massive, elegant vessels that they all recognized. The pride of the Galactic Defense Fleet, crewed by the finest warriors from dozens of species, armed with weapons that could crack moons and shielded by technology that had taken millennia to perfect. All of them were burning. The holographic battlefield hung suspended in the archive chamber like a three-dimensional nightmare. Dozens of Galactic Defense Fleet vessels, each one a kilometer-long masterpiece of military engineering, drifted dead in space, their hulls split open like broken eggs. Debris fields sparkled with the remnants of shields that had been designed to withstand stellar flares. And moving through the carnage, almost too fast for the recording equipment to track, were ships unlike anything in the galactic database. Accessing combat logs, Crick's whispered, his chrome surface now reflecting patterns of deep distress. The data streams flowing through his consciousness carried information that challenged every assumption about warfare, technology, and the nature of conflict itself. The first voice that emerged from a hologram belonged to Admiral Thexmore, a legendary Krillian commander whose tactical brilliance had ended 3 separate galactic conflicts. His normally steady rumble was fractured with disbelief. Day 1 of engagement. We've initiated standard first contact protocols with the Terran system. Our diplomatic corps is prepared to offer the usual terms: technology sharing, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs. These humans should be grateful for the opportunity to join galactic civilization. The students watched as the hologram showed the initial approach. A full diplomatic fleet, escorted by sufficient military vessels to pacify any unreasonable resistance. Standard procedure for integrating primitive species into the galactic community. Day 2. Admiral Thex Moore's voice continued, but now it carried notes of confusion. The Terrans have refused our generous offer. They demanded we leave their system immediately. This is unprecedented. Most species view contact with galactic civilization as the greatest moment in their history. Velna's scales shifted to puzzled blue. Refused? They turned down faster than light travel. Medical technology that could extend their lifespans by centuries. Day 3. The Admiral's log continued. The Terrans have issued what they call an ultimatum. They're giving us 24 hours to withdraw from their system. The audacity is almost amusing. Their most advanced vessels barely achieve 1% of light speed. The hologram shifted, showing the human response. Ships had emerged from Earth, crewed by galactic standards, using primitive fusion drives and basic alloy hulls. They were laughably outnumbered, perhaps 50 vessels against the galaxy's most advanced fleet. Day 4. Combat has been initiated. What followed defied every principle of space warfare that galactic civilization had developed over millennia. The human ships moved wrong. They accelerated beyond what their hull specifications should have allowed, pulling maneuvers that should have liquefied their crews. Their weapons, crude kinetic projectiles and basic fusion warheads, somehow penetrated shielding that could deflect particle beams and antimatter torpedoes. But that wasn't the truly terrifying part. The terrifying part was their tactical doctrine. They're not trying to win. Admiral Thex Moore's voice carried growing horror. They're trying to learn. Every exchange teaches them something new about our capabilities. They're adapting in real time. The hologram showed the truth of his words. Human vessels that should have been destroyed by the first salvo instead used their destruction as data points. Ships would deliberately sacrifice themselves to test galactic shielding, weapons systems, and tactical responses. Each loss provided information that the surviving vessels immediately incorporated into their strategies. Day 7. We've destroyed 90% of their initial fleet. They should be requesting surrender terms. Instead, they've launched a second wave. Their new ships incorporate countermeasures for every weapon system we've deployed. Quinn's tentacles were writhing in patterns of pure terror. His species understood adaptation. It was the core of their evolutionary success. But this was something else entirely. This was weaponized learning at a speed that shouldn't be biologically possible. Day 12. The humans have stopped fighting conventionally. They're using their ships as guided projectiles, ramming our vessels at velocities that turn both ships into expanding plasma clouds. Our casualty ratios are unacceptable. The hologram showed the new reality. Human ships accelerating to significant percentages of light speed, their crews undoubtedly dead from the acceleration alone, but their vessels now transformed into relativistic weapons that no shield could stop. Lysa's gaseous form was flickering so rapidly she was barely visible. They're killing themselves just to hurt us. Day 18. We've received intelligence that the humans have industrialized their entire system in the span of 2 weeks. Every asteroid, every moon, every available resource has been converted to military production. They're manufacturing vessels faster than we can destroy them. Crix's optical sensors were strobing with processing overload. Impossible. Complete system industrialization requires decades of infrastructure development. But the evidence was undeniable. The hologram showed Earth's solar system transforming in real time. Asteroid mining operations that appeared overnight. Manufacturing facilities that consumed entire moons. And everywhere, the constant production of new ships, each design incorporating lessons learned from the previous wave's destruction. Day 23. That humans have developed faster than light communication. We don't understand how. Our best scientists estimate they would need centuries to achieve such breakthrough in quantum entanglement theory. Day 25. The humans have achieved faster than light travel. The words hung in the archive chamber like a death sentence. Around the galaxy, species had required millennia to develop FTL capabilities. The mathematics alone typically took centuries to master. Day 28. Human vessels have appeared in 17 different systems simultaneously. They're not attacking. They're studying. Learning about our industrial capabilities, our resource extraction methods, our population centers. Zextar's wings had begun trembling uncontrollably. Studying us? Day 30. The humans have withdrawn from all systems. All combat has ceased. We're receiving a transmission. A new voice filled the chamber. Human. Male. Speaking in perfectly fluent galactic standard, despite first contact occurring only 30 days earlier. To the representatives of galactic civilization. We appreciate your educational demonstration of your military capabilities. We have learned much about your technologies, your tactics, and your limitations. We are returning to our system now. We suggest you do not return to ours. The voice paused, and when it continued, there was something in its tone that made every student in the chamber understand why humans were banned from the academy. We do not wish to be your enemies. But if you make us your enemies, you will discover that we learn very, very quickly. The hologram faded, leaving them in darkness, punctuated only by the gentle hum of the storage units and the sound of their own terrified breathing. The silence in the archive chamber stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Zextar's compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he stared at the space where the hologram had been, his four arms hanging limp at his sides. "Show me the casualty reports," he whispered. Crix's chrome surface had dulled, as if the data he'd processed had somehow tarnished his reflective coating. I don't think we should." "Show me." The hologram flickered back to life, displaying columns of numbers that made Velna's scales shift to colors none of them had ever seen before. Fleet designations, ship names, crew complements, all marked with the same cold notation. Total loss. 17,438 casualties, Crix read, his voice now carrying harmonics of grief. 41 vessels destroyed. The entire third battle group. Gone. In 30 days, Quinn added, his tentacles coiled tight with horror. A species that didn't have space travel 30 days earlier destroyed 41 of our most advanced warships. But Leysa had drifted toward another console, her gaseous form pulsing with fearful curiosity. There's more here. Post-contact surveillance reports. Long-range monitoring data. Show us. Velna rumbled, though her massive frame was trembling in a way that suggested she'd rather not know. The new hologram materialized, showing Earth's solar system as it appeared 1 year after the conflict. What they saw challenged every assumption about civilization, technology, and the limits of possible development. The system was unrecognizable. Mercury had been transformed into a massive solar collection array, its surface covered with energy-gathering structures that fed power to the rest of the system. Venus had been converted into a manufacturing world, its toxic atmosphere now containing sprawling industrial complexes that produced materials at rates that dwarfed most galactic civilizations. Mars showed signs of complete terraforming, not the centuries-long process that most species required, but transformation completed in mere months. Atmospheric processors the size of continents had converted the dead world into something habitable. And Earth itself. They'd built a Dyson swarm, Crix whispered, his optical sensors focused on the orbital structures surrounding the human homeworld. Partial, but functional. Energy collection on a stellar scale. The asteroid belt had become a vast industrial complex, each rock converted into manufacturing facilities, refineries, or defensive platforms. The outer planets showed signs of resource extraction that suggested entire moons had been consumed to fuel humanity's expansion. The energy requirements alone. Quinn's chromatophores were cycling through patterns of disbelief. They're harnessing more power than most galactic sectors combined. But it was the ships that truly demonstrated humanity's transformation. Floating in organized formations throughout the system were vessels that bore no resemblance to the crude craft they'd fielded during first contact. These were sleek, elegant designs that incorporated technologies from dozens of galactic civilizations, all reverse-engineered, all improved upon, all produced in quantities that suggested manufacturing capabilities beyond anything in known space. "How many ships?" Zextar asked, though his voice suggested he didn't want to know the answer. Crix interfaced with the surveillance data, his chrome surface now reflecting patterns of pure terror. "Conservative estimate based on visible formations and industrial output." He paused, his optical sensors flickering rapidly. "Minimum of 50,000 vessels. Maximum, potentially unlimited. Their manufacturing capacity appears to be exponentially increasing." 50,000. Velena's scales had gone completely black. The entire galactic defense fleet only has 12,000 ships. There's something else. Lysa had found another data stream. Communication intercepts. Internal human transmissions. The new audio filled the chamber with voices speaking in rapid, complex patterns. Not just English, but dozens of human languages, all carrying the same tone of focused urgency. "Translation matrix active," Crix announced. "Processing linguistic patterns. Complete." The voices became clear, and what they heard made every student understand that they'd stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they'd imagined. Manhattan Project Team 7 reporting. Antimatter production increased by 300%. Estimated time to weapons-grade stockpile, 14 days. Von Neumann construction array 12 online. Replication rate now exceeds projected requirements. Beginning expansion to Jupiter system. Strategic Planning Committee to all units. Long-range reconnaissance confirms 17 additional intelligent species within 50 light-years. Data suggests average technological development period of 4,000 to 6,000 years. Recommend immediate intelligence gathering operations. Apollo Revival Project reporting successful test. Faster than light travel time reduced to 12% of galactic standard. Beginning implementation across all vessel classes. The transmissions continued, each one revealing new aspects of humanity's transformation. They'd not only reverse-engineered galactic technology, they'd improved it. FTL drives that were faster than anything in known space. Weapons systems that incorporated principles no other species had discovered. Manufacturing techniques that turned raw matter into finished products at speeds that defied physics. But most terrifying of all was the underlying tone of the communications. These weren't the panicked transmissions of a species struggling to survive. These were the calm, methodical reports of a civilization that had fully mobilized for war and found the experience educational. "They're treating the entire galaxy like a learning exercise," Quinn whispered, his tentacles writhing with existential dread. "Show me the most recent surveillance data," Zextar demanded. "What are they doing now?" Crix hesitated. "The most recent data is classified at level 9. Above my access clearance." "Override it." "I can't. Level 9 requires council authority. The only beings with that clearance are." A new voice cut through the chamber like a blade through silk. Ancient, powerful, and carrying harmonics that suggested its owner had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. "The only beings with that clearance are those who understand what humanity truly represents." Every student turned toward the chamber entrance, where a figure materialized from shadows that seemed deeper than physics should allow. Tall, ethereal, with features that shifted like smoke and eyes that held the weight of millennia. Dean Morthal, the Academy's oldest faculty member. A being so ancient that rumors suggested he'd been present when the first galactic civilizations had achieved spaceflight. "You wanted to know why humans are banned from our academy," he said, his voice carrying undertones that bypassed their ears and spoke directly to their souls. Very well. But understand this. Once you see the evidence I'm about to show you, you can never return to the innocent ignorance you enjoyed just moments ago. His ancient eyes fixed on each of them in turn. The ban was never meant to protect us from humanity. It was meant to protect humanity from what they become when they're truly threatened. Dean Morthal's ancient form glided into the archive chamber, and as he moved, the very air seemed to thicken with the weight of accumulated knowledge. His presence activated systems that none of the students had even noticed. Hidden projectors emerged from the walls, quantum storage units hummed to life, and the chamber's lighting shifted to accommodate displays that required dimensional manipulation to properly view. "You've seen their first contact," the dean said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested he'd been personally present during those events. "You've witnessed their initial transformation, but you haven't seen what they became when they realized we weren't the only threats in the galaxy." The holographic display that materialized above them was different from the previous recordings. This wasn't surveillance data or combat logs. This was something far more comprehensive. A multidimensional analysis that showed not just events, but their implications across space and time. "The Devourer War," Dean Morthal announced, and every student felt their blood run cold. Even in their youth, they'd heard whispers of the Devourers, an extragalactic species that had appeared at the galaxy's edge 2 decades ago, consuming entire solar systems and converting their mass into more of themselves. A threat so severe that every major civilization had united in desperate alliance to contain them. The hologram showed the initial Devourer incursion. Massive, organic vessels that moved like living creatures through space, feeding on stars themselves and reproducing at rates that suggested they could consume the entire galaxy within a century. "The Galactic Council was formed specifically to address this threat," the dean continued. "Every species contributed their finest vessels, their most advanced weapons, their greatest strategic minds. We threw everything we had at the Devourers, and we were losing." The display showed the early battles, massive fleets engaging the alien swarm in desperate holding actions. Ships that had seemed invincible during the human contact were destroyed like toys. Weapons that could crack planets barely scratched the Devourers' adaptive hulls. After 3 years of warfare, we had lost 40% of our combined fleet strength. The Devourers had consumed over 200 solar systems. Our strategic projections suggested total galactic extinction within 50 years. Sextar's wings were trembling so violently he could barely speak. But the war ended. The Devourers were defeated. How? Dean Morthal's ancient eyes fixed on him with something that might have been pity. "We received a transmission from the Sol system. The humans were offering to join the war effort." The students exchanged glances. After everything they'd learned about humanity's capabilities, this seemed like potentially good news. "The Council's initial response was unanimous refusal," the dean continued. "We'd seen what humans could do when threatened. The last thing we wanted was to give them access to galactic military networks, strategic planning, and intelligence about our remaining defensive capabilities. But we were desperate." Velna rumbled, her scales shifting to colors that suggested she'd already guessed where this story was heading. "Yes, after losing the Beta Centauri system, the Council voted to accept human assistance. We thought we could manage them, control their involvement, limit their access to sensitive information." The hologram shifted, showing the human response to their invitation to join the galactic war effort. One appeared was a single ship, larger than anything humanity had previously built, but still modest by galactic standards. One ship. Quinn's tentacles writhed with confusion. They sent one ship to fight an extragalactic invasion. The vessel identified itself as the UES Determination. It requested coordinates for the primary Devourer concentration and permission to conduct reconnaissance operations. The display tracked the human ship as it approached the war zone, a region of space where the Devourers had established a foothold, consuming 3 entire star systems and converting them into breeding grounds for more of their kind. The determination entered the affected region and disappeared from our sensors for 72 hours. We assumed it had been destroyed. But it hadn't been, Crix whispered, his optical sensors reflecting patterns of growing dread. No, it hadn't been. The hologram updated, showing the same region of space 3 days later. But now, instead of the teeming swarms of devourer vessels, there was nothing. Empty space where 3 solar systems worth of enemy forces had been. Complete annihilation, the Dean said quietly. Not just the devourer ships, not just their breeding facilities. Every trace of their presence in the region had been eliminated down to the subatomic level. Lace's gaseous form was flickering so rapidly she was barely visible. How? What weapon could achieve such complete destruction? We asked the same question. The human response was educational. A new voice filled the chamber, human, female, speaking with the calm professionalism of someone reporting routine maintenance rather than unprecedented military victory. UVS determination to Galactic Command. Reconnaissance operation complete. We have gathered sufficient data on devourer biology, technology, and strategic doctrine. Deploying solution now. Solution. Dean Morthal repeated the word as if it carried personal pain. They called the complete extinction of an extragalactic invasion force a solution. The hologram showed what happened next, and every student in the chamber understood why humans were banned from not just the Academy, but from galactic civilization itself. Ships began appearing throughout devourer-controlled space. Not hundreds, not thousands. Millions of vessels, each one incorporating technology that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. They moved faster than light without using recognizable FTL drives. They fired weapons that didn't just destroy matter, but seemed to edit it out of existence entirely. The humans had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, the Dean explained. While we thought they were content to remain in their system, they had been studying us, learning about the galaxy, anticipating threats we hadn't even discovered yet. The display showed the systematic extermination of the devourer forces. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't even a war. It was extermination carried out with methodical precision by a species that had apparently weaponized learning itself. Duration of human offensive, 6 hours, 14 minutes. Devourer casualties, 100%. Human casualties, 0. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of 6 young aliens trying to process information that their minds weren't equipped to handle. The war was over, Dean Morthal continued. The greatest threat our galaxy had ever faced, eliminated by a species we had dismissed as primitive just 20 years earlier. But that's good, Zextar managed to whisper. They saved us all. Dean Morthal's ancient eyes fixed on him with something that was definitely pity now. Yes, he said quietly. They saved us. And that's when we realized that we had never been the threat to humanity. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Humanity was the threat to everyone else. The final hologram that Dean Morthal activated filled the entire chamber, transforming it into a 3-dimensional representation of the galaxy itself. Stars swirled in their familiar patterns, trade routes connected major civilizations, and the steady pulse of galactic life continued as it had for millennia. But now, overlaid on this familiar map was something new. Something that made every student in the chamber understand the true scope of what they'd stumbled upon. This is the galaxy as it exists today, the Dean said, his ancient voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. What you're seeing are the monitoring stations. The display revealed a network of structures so vast and comprehensive that it defied imagination. Tiny dots of light marked positions throughout space, not just around major star systems, but everywhere. In empty space between galaxies, around dead stars. In regions where no civilization had ever traveled. Every human exploration vessel, every trade mission, Every diplomatic contact over the past 20 years has been a data-gathering operation, Dean Morthal explained. They've been cataloging our capabilities, our resources, our populations, our technologies. Crick's optical sensors were strobing with processing overload as he attempted to count the monitoring stations. The network covers everything. Every system, every species, every trade route. Comprehensive surveillance of galactic civilization, the Dean confirmed. They know more about us now than we know about ourselves. The hologram zoomed in on specific sectors, revealing the true sophistication of human intelligence gathering. The monitoring stations weren't crude spy satellites. They were sophisticated facilities that tracked everything from economic patterns to military movements to cultural developments. But why? Velna's scales had shifted to colors that suggested her species' deepest confusion. If they're so powerful, why haven't they conquered us? Dean Morthal's form seemed to solidify, as if the question had forced him to confront the most terrifying aspect of human behavior. Because they don't want to conquer us, he said quietly. They want to understand us, and that's infinitely more dangerous. The display shifted again, showing intercepted human communications from the past year. The transmissions revealed a civilization that had evolved far beyond anything in galactic experience. Strategic Analysis Department to Deep Space Command. Cultural assessment of Zephyrian civilization complete. Recommend continued monitoring. Their artistic achievements show potential for innovative engineering applications. Xenobiology Division reporting. Krillian regenerative capabilities analyzed. Potential applications for human medical advancement. Significant. Recommend specimen acquisition through diplomatic channels. Long-Range Planning Committee update. Galactic Council military doctrine assessed. Current threat level. Minimal. Recommend continued non-interference policy unless circumstances change. Unless circumstances change, Quinn repeated, his tentacles coiled with terror. They're not our allies. They're not our enemies. They're studying us like we're specimens. Worse than that, Dean Morthal said, his voice carrying harmonics of ancient grief. They're protecting us. The hologram shifted once more, revealing data that challenged everything the students thought they understood about galactic politics and survival. Show them the hegemony files, the Dean commanded, and the display filled with intelligence reports that made their previous discoveries seem trivial by comparison. The Andromedan hegemony, he explained as images of massive crystalline vessels appeared in the hologram. An extragalactic empire that makes the Devourers look like a minor pest problem. They've been observing our galaxy for the past 15 years, planning an invasion that would make our previous struggles seem like children's games. Observing. Zextar's wings had gone completely still. How do you know this? Because the humans told us. Dean Morthal's ancient form seemed to flicker with something that might have been bitter amusement. 3 years ago, a human diplomatic vessel appeared at the Galactic Council headquarters. They presented evidence of the hegemony threat, comprehensive intelligence that our own spy networks had completely missed. The display showed the evidence. Massive staging areas in the void between galaxies, scout ships that had penetrated galactic borders undetected, invasion plans that suggested the hegemony viewed their galaxy as nothing more than a resource extraction zone. The humans recommended immediate defensive preparations, the Dean continued. They offered to share advanced shielding technologies, improved weapons systems, and strategic coordination protocols. The Council's response was unanimous terror. Terror. Lysa's gaseous form was pulsing with confused fear. Why would defensive assistance cause terror? Because we finally understood what humanity had become, Dean Morthal said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. They weren't offering to help us defend ourselves. They were informing us that they had already neutralized the threat. The hologram updated to show the Andromedan hegemony's staging areas as they existed now. Where massive invasion fleets had been preparing for galactic conquest, only empty space remained. Complete elimination of hegemony forward forces, Crix read from the data streams flowing through his consciousness. Estimated enemy casualties, 12 million vessels. Duration of engagement, 8 minutes, 37 seconds. 8 minutes, Velna whispered, her massive frame trembling. They eliminated an entire extragalactic empire in 8 minutes. And they did it without asking permission. Without informing us it was happening. Without even telling us about the threat until after they'd resolved it. Dean Morthal's ancient eyes fixed on each student in turn. Do you understand what this means? The silence stretched until Quinn finally found his voice. It means they're the apex predator in the galaxy, and we never even knew we were prey. Worse, the Dean corrected. It means they're the apex predator in the galaxy, and they've decided we're worth protecting. They've appointed themselves as our guardians, whether we want their protection or not. The hologram shifted one final time, showing a transmission that had been sent to the Galactic Council just 6 months ago. A human figure appeared, middle-aged, unremarkable by galactic standards, speaking with the calm professionalism that they'd learned to associate with species-ending capability. To the representatives of galactic civilization, we hope this message finds your species well and prosperous. We wanted to inform you that we've detected 17 additional extragalactic threats approaching your region of space. These have been neutralized. Please continue your normal activities. We will handle any similar issues that arise in the future. The message paused, and when the human continued, there was something in his tone that made every student understand why their professors had nightmares about humanity. We've also taken the liberty of establishing defensive installations around each of your major systems. These are primarily automated and will not interfere with your daily activities. Please do not attempt to approach or study these installations, for your own safety. The transmission ended, leaving the students staring at empty air while the implications settled into their minds like poison. Defensive installations, Zextar managed to whisper. Around our homeworlds. Without asking permission, Velna added, her scales now cycling through colors that suggested her species' deepest existential dread. The ban, Crix said suddenly, his optical sensors focusing on Dean Morthal with mechanical precision. The ban on human students. It's not because they're dangerous to us. No, the Dean confirmed. It's because we're dangerous to them. How? Lysa's gaseous form was barely visible now, flickering like a dying flame. How could we possibly be dangerous to beings who casually eliminate galactic threats? Dean Morthal moved toward the chamber's central console, his ancient hands hovering over controls that seemed to respond to his presence alone. Because if they studied alongside you, learned about your cultures, formed friendships with your people, they might start to see you as individuals rather than species to be protected. And if something happened to one of you, if one of their friends was hurt or killed, their response wouldn't be measured strategic intervention. The final hologram materialized above them, showing not space or ships or weapons, but something far more terrifying. A human psychological profile compiled by the galaxy's finest xenobiologists and behavioral analysts. Humans don't just learn quickly, the Dean explained as the data flowed around them. They form emotional attachments that override their logical decision-making processes. They're capable of actions that defy all rational behavior when those they care about are threatened. The profile showed examples from human history. Wars fought over single individuals, civilizations destroyed because of personal slights, resources devoted to saving single lives regardless of strategic cost. If a human student formed a friendship with, say, a young hexapod, and that hexapod was harmed by another species, Dean Morthal let the implication hang in the air. The human response wouldn't be targeted elimination of the threat. It would be whatever their emotional state demanded. And we've seen what humans can accomplish when they're truly motivated. Total species extinction, Quinn whispered, his chromatophores now displaying patterns of pure terror. Potentially, the Dean confirmed. The ban exists to prevent humanity from forming personal connections that might override their current policy of benevolent protection. As long as they see galactic civilization as an abstract concept to be preserved, their interventions remain measured and strategic. But if they saw us as friends, Zextar's wings were trembling again. Then any threat to their friends would be met with the full fury of a species that has weaponized learning itself. Dean Morthal finished. The galaxy would become a very different place. Quieter. Emptier. Safer for humans and their chosen friends. But he didn't need to finish the sentence. Every student in the chamber understood the implication. The archive chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of the storage units and the sound of 6 young aliens grappling with the realization that their entire understanding of strength, survival, and civilization had been fundamentally wrong. Finally, Velna spoke, her massive form somehow seeming smaller than when they'd entered. What do we do with this knowledge? Dean Morthal's ancient eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he considered the question that had haunted galactic leadership for 2 decades. You do what every generation of galactic citizens has done since the first human ship appeared in our space, he said quietly. You live your lives. You pursue your studies. You grow and learn and love and dream. And you pray to whatever gods your species worship that humanity continues to find you interesting enough to protect, but not interesting enough to befriend. He moved toward the chamber exit, his ancient form already beginning to fade back into the shadows from which he'd emerged. The human band will remain in place, he said without turning around. Not because we fear what they might learn from us, but because we fear what we might learn from them. Some friendships are too dangerous for civilizations to survive. As the dean disappeared into the corridor beyond, the students were left alone with their new understanding of the universe. Above them, the monitoring stations continued their eternal watch, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity continued its patient guardianship over species who would never fully comprehend the scope of their protection. The innocent laughter that had filled these halls just hours ago seemed like it belonged to a different universe entirely. Now they understood why their professors spoke of humans in whispers, why the ban would never be lifted, and why sometimes the greatest mercy was to remain forever ignorant of just how thoroughly you were outclassed by those who had appointed themselves your protectors. In the end, the human ban wasn't about keeping monsters out of their academy. It was about preventing their academy from accidentally creating new ones.